Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Looking forward to a boring week here in America. I don't think, is there anything even going on? It is going to be a dull week around here, but we'll try to help you through it with some entertaining, and enlightening, and interesting radio. We certainly have that for you today. Second hour, Dr. Stacy Trasancos will be here, and we'll do faith and science, and that's always fun. And this is one of the areas that we've got to be able to answer questions in. So maybe you have your own questions about the relationship between faith and science. Maybe you're trying to answer somebody else's question about faith and science. Dr. Stacy, perfect for that. First hour, old friend Steve Ray is back, and we're going to have some fun because he wrote an article called 6 Biblical Myths Debunked a couple months ago here for Catholic Answers Magazine online. And they're great. And there's these things that people say about the Bible that sometimes they're even nice things, and you'd kind of almost wish that they were true, but they're not true. They're not related to the actual text. Steve Ray, you can find everything that Steve Ray does. You'll find it on CatholicConvert.com. He is a convert to the Catholic faith and a producer of all kinds of media, including books and videos and television programming and radio and everything else in order to communicate the truths of the faith to people. And among the many things he does is take people to the Holy Land and to other holy places around the world to help them grow closer to God. Steve Ray, thanks very much for being here with us.
Well, thank you, Cy. I always look forward to these segments with you. It's something I look forward to all month, and I enjoy talking about these kind of things. I love being Catholic.
Well, this was a fun article, I thought, because sometimes you feel almost bad, like somebody will tell you something about the Bible, and you almost don't want to tell them, I'm not so sure that that's that's true. So let me give out the number, and then you tell us some of these. Hey, if you want to talk about Bible myths, if you want to ask Steve Ray, is that right? Is this a thing that I heard about a way to interpret a biblical, a scripture passage? Is it correct? You're welcome to call 888-318-7884. Carlos told me to slow down. It's Carlos in Texas. 888-318-7884. 7884. We're talking about biblical myths today with Steve Ray. Can you give us some, Steve?
Yeah, these are the myth is really people think these things are biblical and they're not. And like you said, I've had people so excited. Oh, Steve, did you hear this thing about that they break the legs of a lamb? It's like Jesus, because then the lamb won't wander away anymore, and the shepherd has to carry him. And he gets this great, wonderful, emotional bond with the shepherd. So in other words, the story goes that there's a lamb, and that lamb out of the flock keeps wandering away. He's a disobedient lamb. So the shepherd breaks his leg, and that keeps the lamb from wandering and forms a bond, because the shepherd has to carry that lamb for a while. And that's like Jesus, who disciplines us so that we stay close to him and don't wander away. And so that's a myth. It didn't happen. It doesn't happen. And it actually, okay, let me just read that passage in Matthew 18 about the shepherd going out and looking for the lost lamb.
Okay.
If a man has 100 sheep and one of them has gone astray, does he not leave the 99 and go in search of the one that went astray? And if he finds it, he rejoices over it and then breaks his leg.
Oh, now, wait a minute.
Now, and see, that's the reaction, really, that is just, it's a capricious, shepherds don't do that, by the way.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons they don't do it is because it is a bad thing to do. And second of all is that lamb has to eat. How is he going to eat? Now, I was raised on a farm, and I didn't have lambs, but we had goats. Same thing. And when the baby goat drinks for the first year or so, he braces himself with his legs, and he bangs the udder of his mother. He bangs it, and that kind of releases the milk, and then he starts sucking. But he's like on all fours, banging and bracing himself. If you break the leg of a lamb, he can't do that. And you don't, these shepherds didn't have CVS drugstore where you could go buy lamb formula with a rubber nipple so that the shepherd could feed the little lamb.
No.
And the shepherd has 100 or more other sheep to take care of. And he can't spend all his time taking care of one when he's got all the others. And by the way, when you go over there and you ask shepherds, there's actually I've been there many times, and I'll tell you that shepherds don't do that to their lambs. They wouldn't even consider it.
Well, that's one of those. That's what we're talking about today with Steve Ray, is these biblical myths, these ideas that people have on what the scripture either says or implies. And not all of these are true. And if you've got one you'd like to ask Steve about, is it true that this is what a passage means, this or that? You're welcome to call 888-318-7884. And I think sometimes we just want to have a little bit of knowledge that other people don't have. And that's, I think, where we get the ones like the eye of the needle. Jesus, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Well, I just say, and if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. And some of these, the 6 or 7 that we're going to do, you want them to be true because they're great homily material. If you're teaching a Bible study, I mean, it's just great, and then you can apply it to this. But I was told that this was in a certain book entitled Psalm 23. Well, I happen to own that book, and I went through it, and there's not mentioned anywhere in there, though the person who told me said that's in that book. But there is a book about a guy who lived among the shepherds. It's called The Perfect Shepherd, and in his book, he debunks that myth, too. And he says that would never happen. I lived with the shepherds out here in Bethlehem, and that nobody would do this. So, and the eye of the needle is another one too.
Tell me about the eye of the needle, because the thing that we hear, okay, he's not literally talking about an eye of a needle. He's talking about something else.
The story goes this way, that there was in Jerusalem a gate called the Eye of the Needle, and it was a small gate. And when you brought a camel loaded with merchandise from maybe the spice route or one of the caravan routes, you had to take everything off the camel to get the camel to barely squeeze through that little gate. So in other words, we have all of these bundles of wealth and riches and things that keep us from getting through that gate. And Jesus is saying it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven. Now, I know several very wealthy people. One's a billionaire, and this verse terrifies them because. And I was with a lady a while ago that was a millionaire, multimillionaire, and this verse just preys on their mind because they have wealth. And does this mean I can't get to heaven, kind of a thing? But there was no gate called the needle, the eye of the needle. This wasn't the case. The reality is that it's a real camel, because when you were, like, say, a child, and you teach children these stories, the parables of Jesus, I'm sure, were taught to children all the time. And the parable is that the biggest thing a kid ever saw was a camel. A camel's huge. I mean, people don't know that. I take people when I go to Israel and other places, we ride camels, and they're big beasts. They're big things. That's the biggest thing a kid ever saw. And the smallest thing he ever saw is a little needle. And I have some downstairs. I have a Bible museum in my house that I collected all these things. I have needles made of iron and needles made of bone, and they have a little tiny hole in them. And the whole object is you can't get that camel through that eye of that needle. It's just not going to happen. It's too small. There's other. Remember, Jesus also said the story about the. Let's see, I got it right here. He's always talking using rabbinic hyperbole. That means exaggerations to make a point. Rabbis did that. He also describes things large and small. He says that he describes a man who strains out a gnat but swallows a camel.
Oh, right.
Now, it's a real gnat. It's a real gnat, and it's a real camel. So you can imagine somebody with a little screen straining out a gnat, but lets the camel go through. This is the same kind of thing, the eye of the needle and the real camel going through it. Now, also, one last thing I would say is that it doesn't say in the Greek, the original, it's harder for a camel to go through the eye of the needle, which would be a specific, referring to something specific.
Right.
Like if there was a gate in my yard, and I would say that, I said, it's harder for you, Si, to get through the eye of the needle there than it is. But it's not. In the Greek, there's no the. It's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle. It's generic, not pointing to a particular gate.
We're talking about Bible myths, and these are things that sometimes we have these explanations, sometimes additions to what the biblical text is. Often they're charming. Sometimes you click the share button on them and send them to other people. Problem is they're not true, and so that's what we're talking about today with Steve Ray. If you've got one you'd like to check with Steve Ray about, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. We got to take a quick break. Right back with more Bible myths with Steve Ray on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features texts of daily Mass, prayers, articles, meditations, art commentaries, and more, in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church, on the web at magnificat.com.
EWTN is now on Twitter. Get short, timely messages from EWTN on your computer or cell phone. It's easy to stay up to date on a wide variety of topics. Pro-life news, Vatican announcements, catechesis, apologetics, the latest EWTN programming, and more. You can link to EWTN on Twitter from our homepage or go to twitter.com/EWTN. At work, at home, at school, and on the road. Stay connected to your world with EWTN's Twitter page.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We got to be careful with the Word of God given to us in Scripture, that we are conveying it with the very meanings that God gave it, because it's His meaning that matters. It's not ours that matters. What He has to say is what matters, and we need to understand it. And often Bible scholars can be very helpful in that. Sometimes kind of a Bible scholarship that's not fully scholarly can get us confused about the meaning of the gospel. I mean, one of the things that I hear preached, I still hear it occasionally preached, Steve, I'm sure you've heard this one. When Jesus fed the 5,000, it wasn't that He multiplied the loaves and fishes. It was that he somehow, his sharing and his example encouraged people to share with one another, and that's the real miracle. And that is what I would call false Bible scholarship.
Yeah. It's my seventh myth.
Oh, it is? Okay.
I heard the homily once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I added that one after I wrote the article.
Yeah.
For Catholic Answers magazine. You can find it, like, if they just go to Catholic Answers and go to magazine, they can read this article. I also just published one with Catholic Answers on the Trail of Blood, which Baptists say they can trace their lineage all the way back to the apostles, and they can't. But that's another article I just put up on Catholic Answers magazine. But what happens is somebody says this, they come up with it, they see it on the internet, and then they just assume it's true without checking into it. And they're such good stories. What it is it's a lack of biblical literacy a lot of times. But it's also what I found, and I've learned this by being in the Holy Land over 200 times, is that there's a certain cultural literacy that you have to have as well. How do people live then? Not when you go there now, even, for example, I've been to weddings, and they're still 7 days long, just like they were in John chapter 2. I was supposed to go to a wedding in September of this year, but Delta canceled their flight, so I could go, but to Nazareth, actually. But you need a cultural context, and what people do is they read their experience back into the Bible. So they think that Jesus and everybody there used porcelain toilets, that they all had houses like we have. And I always ask people when I'm in Nazareth, I said, what do you think the Holy Family did the first thing when they got up in the morning? And everybody says, pray.
Yeah.
And I said, is that the first thing you do in the morning? Well, no, we go to the bathroom. So did they. And they didn't have a bathroom. They lived in caves. They had to go outside. All of a sudden, you realize that they don't live like we do. Right. They live very different. And it's necessary to go back, and I spend a lot of my time trying to understand the archaeology, the culture, the language. Jesus says things that sometimes are shocking to us. But he's using what was very common back then called rabbinic hyperbole. Rabbis would exaggerate things to show how silly they were, or to make a point, to exaggerate something like camel in an eye of a needle. And the more we understand the literary content of Scripture and the culture and the way people live, the more we can understand actually what the Bible means and how we can apply it better for ourselves.
Can I give you an example of that was really striking to me? Is in this is not from the Gospels. This is from St. Paul. But the thing, we are so shocked by the fact that he says, "Wives, be submissive to your husbands." That is not at all what shocked the ancient people. The part where he said, "Husbands, love your wives," was utterly shocking to the Roman world.
Right.
That shocked
Exactly.
them. The first part, they just passed over that. They didn't even think about
Yep.
it. But so we're shocked because our society is so changed.
Yep.
We're shocked in the wrong place by the Scripture.
And another one in St. Paul, too, in Corinthians, where he says that a woman should not withhold herself from the marital relationship obligations that she owes to her husband, marital relationships. Women do not withhold yourselves because your husband owns your body. But then he turns around and says, husbands, don't deprive your wives of their marital rights because they own your body.
Yeah.
Which was like an atom bomb going off in the Roman world, where men owned their wives. They had a wife, they had concubines, they had mistresses. And to say that your wife, you can't do certain things because your wife owns your body,
Right. Yeah.
totally against everything that the Romans lived and practiced.
I'm going to get back to some of your myths that you have in the article because it's a wonderful article. And I tried this, and this will work. If you just write in your search engine, Catholic Answers Bible Myths, it'll take you directly to Steve's article. And I want to get to one of those. But we have a caller, Donna, in Virginia, listening on 103.1 FM. Wasn't able to stay on the line, but asked this question. Should we take every word that Jesus says literally? For example, pluck out your eye if it causes you to sin.
Well, see, that's an example of rabbinic hyperbole. Nobody ever dreamed that he meant that, because if he did, there'd be a bunch of blind people going around with only left hands. Jesus used the very method of teaching that the rabbis used at that time. He always would exaggerate certain things to make a point. For example, when the Syrophoenician woman, who is a Gentile up in Lebanon of today, came and asked Jesus to come heal his daughter. And he said, it's not right for me to give children's food to the dogs. He just called her a dog.
Yeah.
What I'm doing and the blessings and the healing I'm doing are for the Jewish people. You're a Gentile, and I can't give it to the dogs. And people just say, that's so insensitive. That is racist. That is all the things that we hate. But they don't understand that in that time and culture, this was a humorous exchange. This was a challenge. It was like a mental challenge. He says that to her because she knows he's Jewish. She knows that who he is. She knows that he's not there to take care of. He's preaching to the Jewish people. But she still comes up and she's bold enough to ask him. And I think she said it with a challenging look on his face. And Jesus said that back to her with kind of a smile on his face, because it's the way that they bantered with each other. It was a humorous exchange, really. And I wrote a whole article about that too. And then she says, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the table.
That's a good
And I
response.
can just see Jesus's face. The smile came. He
Yeah.
said, touche, you won that one, lady. Okay, good. I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah.
See, it was the way that they bantered. If you were a rabbi and you didn't come back at someone like that, then you're no good as a rabbi. You're not using rabbinic teaching.
Yeah.
And to come back at her like that, she then knows she has to come back at him, and she says, yeah, but even the crumbs. And I could just see him smiling and his big white teeth showing. He's saying, touche, lady, you won that one. You got me.
You know, Steve, I saw this documentary on rabbinical schools where they teach boys and young men to do this rabbinical arguing, and it's really beautiful the way they debate, but they do not mess around. Like they say the harshest things, but they are smiling when they're saying it. They're not. It's not a. I learned a lot about Jesus from watching this documentary about the Jewish way of arguing. It's not meant to bully somebody else. It's meant to get at, like, we go back and forth until we get at the thing. And we're going to, and you say whatever harsh thing, it's fine. We're going back and forth until we get to the thing, the truth of what we're debating here.
Right. And I respect you and you respect me enough that we can go at each other. A real friend can go at it with another friend.
Right. Yeah.
Without being insulted, knowing that we're trying to get to the thing, like you just said.
Yeah.
And this is the way Jesus did, and it's the way Paul did too. Paul was very brash, but he always did it out of love, and he was getting to a certain point with those people that he was after.
You got a Bible myth you want to ask about? You're welcome to call, as Donna did, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Steve Ray is our guest. We're talking about Bible myths. If there's one you'd like to know, is it a myth or is this one real? You're welcome to call and ask. We do hear sometimes that there's a very it's strange to us how specific the descriptions are. I think it's in John's Gospel of the burial cloths and the napkin.
Yes.
And all. And so people assign a meaning to the folding of the burial cloths. And one of which you debunk as a myth. This is not what it means.
Right. Imagine like you invite me over for dinner, and I have my napkin on my lap, and I have to go use the restroom. So I take my napkin and I fold it up and put it on the table next to my plate, and I go, that folded napkin means I'm coming back. Okay, I'm just setting it here while I'm gone. Then when dinner's over, I put my silverware all on the plate and I crunch my napkin up into a ball and I set it there. Then you know that I'm done eating and I'm not coming back.
Ah.
So the story goes, and Simon Peter, following John into the tomb, he saw the linen clothes, that's the shroud, lying there, and the face cloth, that's the Greek word siderium, which had been on Jesus's head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded up in a place by itself. And because it was folded, it meant Jesus was coming back. It wasn't just crumpled up and thrown to the side. That was, and only one Bible translation calls it a napkin, the Revised Standard Version. It actually means, it comes from the word siderium, that means sweat. It was a cloth to wipe sweat from your face. When you died, you would put a sweat cloth or a piece over your face before you wrapped them in the shroud. So when they took the shroud off, that face cloth, the piece over his head, was folded up in a place by itself, and the Shroud of Turin was over on the other side. And because they folded that napkin, it meant Jesus was coming back. He wasn't gone, he was coming back, and he rose from the dead and came back 3 days later. Now, the problem with that is that they didn't have napkins back then like we do. This is what's called an anachronism, where you read your own experience back into a different time period and assume that they had a napkin like we do. Napkins are very European American things. Not everybody uses napkins. And the Greek word there isn't even napkin. It's a face cloth or a sweatband or a sweat cloth. And so it sounds good. Just think, well, how good that sounds if I'm doing a homily. And then Jesus, the angel specifically folded that cloth so that it would be a sign that he would be coming back. After the dinner, you fold your napkin. It means you're coming back. Or when you're before you leave, you're coming back. But it just doesn't happen. And there's only all the other translations of the Bible. Only the Revised Standard says napkin. But remember when Paul went in Ephesus and he had his handkerchief or a cloth? It's the same word, siderium, a cloth, that he'd use people to wipe the sweat from their face. And he said that people would come and touch it and they'd be healed. Yeah. It's the same word there. That's the same word. It's a lot of Bibles say handkerchief.
We're kind of creating a meaning here then. There isn't, I mean, it's a lovely story and all that, but it's just not there. Right. It's not there in the text.
No, it's not there, and nor did it happen because they didn't even have napkins back there when they ate. When you got done, you're eating lamb with your hands. First of all, if you eat over there, I've eaten with Jordanian families where there's just 2 or 3 big pots of food, and you just take a piece of bread, pita bread, and you just dig in there. By the time you're done, your hands are all covered with lamb and rice, And a napkin's not going to do anything. You go and you wash your hands with water. That's how they clean up after they eat in biblical times. So the whole idea that they had nice napkins like we do and that they fold them and leave them there is an anachronism. It's reading our experience back into them and making an application that didn't exist and doesn't exist.
The number is 888-318-7884. We've got questions for you, Steve Ray, about biblical myths. If you want to read Steve's article on 6 biblical myths, things that people say, they might sound good, but they don't really comport with the text. They're not part of the meaning that's been handed to us. Just search in your search bar Catholic Answers 6 or just Catholic Answers Biblical Myths, and it will come up. We're going to get to calls right after the break, so you're welcome to call. There are still some lines open, 888-318-7884. As we go, I will invite you to go to Catholic.com and click on the banner and get your Catholic Answers calendar. The calendar is really something special this year. It's all sacred art produced by living artists. We're very excited to get to promote and share the beautiful sacred art that's being done today. Go to Catholic.com and click on that banner and get your Catholic Answers 2025 calendar. We hope that one of the things that we communicate here at Catholic Answers Live is that our Catholic faith allows us to be fully serious about all the problems we encounter in the church and in the world, but it also lets us have light hearts and maybe even mix in a bit of fun, and that is exactly what our good friend Joe Heschmeyer does in his popular podcast, Shameless Popery. You should check it out at shamelessjoe.com. Joe's got a deep grasp of the faith, of morals, the teachings of the church, all that, but he's also got a witty conversational style. He entertains and he informs, but you will leave equipped to better answer the most common challenges, misconceptions, and questions about the Catholic faith. He's got insightful guests, he does on-air debates, and he takes a close look into all the things that you want to know about as a Catholic living today. You'll walk away knowledgeable and filled with joy. Look for Joe on his YouTube channel. Check him out at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, become a patron.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers monthly giving club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
When it comes to Catholic teachings about Mary, there's one question we hear more than any other. Where is that in the Bible? The answer? Everywhere. In Bible Mary, the Mother of Jesus and the Word of God, Father John Weiss opens Scripture to reveal a Mary who has been hiding in plain sight. Order your copy of Bible Mary today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. All right, so just to keep, if you're keeping score at home, shepherds don't break the leg of a lamb. So that's a little myth about, and I'm sure told for a good reason. There's no gate called the Eye of a Needle going into Jerusalem. And when Jesus said about the camel going through the eye of a needle, he was using a real metaphor, a real symbol of just the great difficulty of he does relieve their upset shortly after. Read the whole story, but he's not kidding around about how hard it is. The folded napkin at the tomb doesn't mean Jesus is coming back. And we've got more of them, but I want to get to some calls for Steve Ray, our guest Steve Ray. I will say again, check out Steve's website, CatholicConvert.com. Where's the next pilgrimage you're going on, Steve?
Oh, we got a great one coming up to Poland in April. We're going to be celebrating the Divine Mercy Sunday at the Divine Mercy Chapel in Poland with Maria Faustina's sisters.
Beautiful.
It's that day. It's almost impossible to go there, but we have reservations for our group. the real Divine Mercy at the place where it started in Poland with the sisters. So that's, and also Auschwitz. We go to Auschwitz for the cell where Maximilian Kolbe died, and a lot. This is just a great trip. So Poland, then we have the saints and shrines of Italy, starting in Milan and working our way all the major saints and shrines, ending up in Rome. And that's in May. And then in June, because it's our 20th anniversary, we're taking a Danube River cruise. And we rented the whole ship. We chartered the whole ship for our group, and there's only 26 cabins left on that whole ship.
Check it all out at CatholicConvert.com. Let's go to Rich in Cincinnati, Ohio. Rich, we're awful glad you called. Go ahead with your question for Steve.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for taking my call. So my question was, we have a priest that would wasn't assigned to our parish permanently, but he would visit and do about 1 or 2 masses a month there. And in different homilies, I was always kind of wondering which miracle he was going to debunk in that week.
Oh, no.
Coming there. And the first one was the one you already mentioned about, Jesus. The miracle was getting people to share. He didn't really multiply the loaves when he fed the 5,000. And then the other one was that, obviously Jonah couldn't be swallowed by a fish or a whale. That had to be all made up. And there were several others. It seemed like he just was incredible. He couldn't believe any of the miracles in the Bible. And he happened to be a Jesuit. And I was wondering, is there something kind of in the Jesuit order, as an order that they kind of dismissed the miracles, or was he just an outlier?
All righty. You're trying to hit all the hot buttons there. Are you, Rich?
Yeah. Well, the Jesuits aren't what they used to be, but I will tell you that there are some marvelous Jesuits, like Father Mitch Pacwa and Father Fessio, and I could go on with the list. I'm going to be recording a show with Father McTeague, who is a Jesuit, and he's excellent. So, that's all I'm going to say about that one. Don't want to get myself in trouble. But there was a time in the 60s, 70s, 80s where priests and seminarians were sold a bill of goods, and they were basically taught, they demythologized the Bible. They took the spiritual part out. There was another whole movement called Discovering the Historical Jesus. If we can strip away the miracles and all the supernatural stuff that's been added to the story and get to the real Jesus, we can get to the real historical Jesus. And in order to do that, we have to get rid of the supernatural and the miracles and all that. My son, when he was about 6 years old, when we told him the story of the children of Israel escaping Egypt, and all of the armies of Israel were drowned in the Red Sea. And somebody said, well, it was the reason that the Jews could get through there was because there was a wind or something, or a natural phenomenon. So the water was only 2 inches deep. So my son says, so then the real miracle was that the Egyptians all drowned in 2 inches of water. Now, a 6-year-old kid could see through that. See, now this whole thing with let's do I heard that homily, by the way, and the pastor said it. He also was a visiting pastor, and when he got going, I was going to stand up and interrupt the homily. I know you're not supposed to do that, but this was so egregious. And my wife stomped on my foot and pushed it, said, "Sit down, write him a letter." So when I got home, I wrote him a 14-page letter and sent it to his bishop as well. That also is an article on Catholic Answers magazine that I wrote a while back. And he said that the people had food, but they kept it private, and they just kept it to themselves, and they would just eat their food themselves, and they didn't want to share it. So I said in my letter, "Priest, Father, I want you to tell me who I should believe, you or Jesus. You say they had food, that they were hiding it in their picnic baskets under their robes, and they were just being selfish with it. But Jesus, who was there and you were not there, Jesus was there. He said to his disciples, they have been out in this wilderness with us for 3 days, and they have no food. Who should I believe, you or Jesus?" And this miracle is mentioned 6 times in the New Testament because it's so important. In John, they wanted to make him the king, not because he taught people to share. There is nothing in those passages that you could, even if you wanted to, come up with the idea that Jesus gave them a homily about sharing. There's nothing about that. He multiplied loaves and fish, and all 6 accounts say it that way. He did this miracle at least twice, because there was once they had 12 baskets left over, and one time they had 7 baskets left over. And in all of them, he uses 4 verbs. The same as in the upper room. When he took the bread, he said he took, he blessed, he broke, he gave. On the road to Emmaus, when he broke the bread with them, this was the Eucharist. This was the preliminary to the Mass. He took the bread, he blessed it, he broke it, and he gave it. And guess what he did? In every one of these cases when he multiplied loaves and fish, he took, he blessed, he broke, he gave. There's nothing about sharing. He made that bread and he gave it to those people. And they wanted to make him the king. Why? Because they realized, they had said, what can you do that Moses didn't do? Moses gave them miraculous bread in the wilderness called manna. But this bread was even more spectacular. And they wanted to make him a king, not because he taught selfish people to share, but because they saw a miracle that even superseded Moses' miracle in the wilderness. It was a miracle.
Rich, you had another question, Rich, and you're welcome.
But what about Jonah being swallowed?
Okay. Can I tell you a real quick joke about that? I love this joke. A lady's on an airplane. She reads the book of Psalms because she's nervous flying. A businessman sits next to her and says, what are you reading, lady? She said, I'm reading the Bible. He says, you don't believe that old book, do you? She said, of course I do. It's in the Word of God. He says, you don't believe all that's in her. Of course I do. It's the Word of God. What about the story of Jonah? You don't believe that story, do you? That he got spit back out 3 days later? She said, of course I do. It's in the Word of God. And he says, well, lady, if you're so smart, why don't you tell me how that happened with Jonah coming out of the whale? She says, I don't know, but when I get to heaven, I'll ask him. He smiles and he says, okay, lady, and what if he's not in heaven? She said, then you ask him.
All right.
That's one of my favorite jokes, by the way. Let's just go this way. It's told as a true story. It's told as a real event. Jesus uses it as the primary example of the sign that he's going to give to the Jews, that he is really who he says he is, the Son of God. That he is like Jonah was in the belly of the whale 3 days and 3 nights and came out alive. Jesus says that I'm going to be in the belly of the earth for 3 days. The number one image in the catacombs in Rome, where people buried their dead, the number one image that's there is of Jonah coming out of the whale, because that represents the resurrection that we're all going to experience. I have no problem with the supernatural. I have no problem if God can create a whale out of nothing. He can certainly put a man in that whale's stomach for 3 days and bring him back out on shore, both to accomplish the ends that he wanted Jonah to do, but also to be a sign and a typological image of Jesus being in the ground for 3 days and of us being raised from the dead as well. That also, I believe, was a miracle. There's no reason to doubt otherwise unless you're a skeptic.
It does seem to be Rich, I really appreciate your questions because I think they point to a fundamental modern problem of mind, which is I accept Jesus, I appreciate Jesus, I like Jesus, I don't believe in miracles. Jesus, if he's anything, is a miracle worker. So what are you going to do with that? Either he is or he isn't. Right. But there's lots of even those who are preaching in the pulpits that who will not accept Jesus as a miracle worker. Let's go to we got time. Let's go to Jennifer in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, listening on Real Presence Radio. And Jennifer, just because I've got you on from Real Presence Radio, I am going to be up there on Thursday night in Williston, North Dakota, for the fundraiser for Real Presence Radio, and I am delighted to get to come. So I'm sorry to take your time, Jennifer, to make that little ad, but there it is. Go ahead with your question for Steve.
Hi, I had heard once, I think I saw it on the internet, someone had said that the sponge on the stick that was raised up to Jesus when he was on the cross to take a drink from would have been a sponge that the Romans would have used to wipe with after using the bathroom. I wasn't sure if that was true or not.
Well, it's not. There were sponges, but the fact that they would these guys are pretty crude, and they didn't carry around a sponge. By the way, a sponge doesn't stay moist and nice for wiping for very long in the Middle East. These Romans had to carry a lot of stuff. They're not going to carry around a sponge and keep it wet so that whenever, once a day or so, they need to, by the way, that never says about going to the toilet. In the biblical language, the phrase is they stepped aside.
Oh,
so
is that what...
Jesus, that's it. It is. In fact, remember when Elijah was going to call down fire from heaven on Mount Morocco with the 450 prophets of Baal. He's taunting them. He says, maybe your God is asleep. Maybe he's on the toilet calling louder. But the phrase is that he has stepped aside, which is the biblical euphemism, which means going to the toilet. So on our pilgrimages, when somebody has to use their toilet, I always say, just tell me you need to step aside, and we'll know biblically what you mean. But this is not, there's nowhere that I know of that this would, in fact, this is a great another myth I can add to my list, but there's nothing I know of where that would be used. In fact, it's a very crude way of life. And I've experienced it myself when I'm way out in the desert in Bethlehem or something. You use leaves, you do whatever you need to, but they didn't carry toilet paper around with them. They didn't have porcelain toilets or restrooms. And I guarantee they did not carry, each Roman soldier carried their own sponge that they kept in a plastic bag to keep it moist so that it could be used for wiping. So I think that also is a myth.
Jennifer, I would love to send you a book. I'd like to send you Jimmy Akin's book, A Daily Defense, just to say thank you for the most uncomfortable question I've had this week. No, also, it's a great question, Jennifer.
Well.
I'm just playing with you, Jennifer. I do want to send you the book. Hang on, we'll send it to you. But maybe I'm a little squeamish. We'll take a quick break. Right back with Steve Ray on Catholic Answers Live.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
EWTN Global Catholic Network is the largest religious media network in the world. 11 global TV channels, English and Spanish radio networks with over 500 AM and FM radio affiliates, one of the largest Catholic websites in the world, dozens of podcasts every week, social media, electronic and print news services, and EWTN Publishing. EWTN is the global Catholic network. For more about EWTN, visit EWTN.com.
Who was the first Catholic in your family? Were they evangelized by a friend? A coworker, a stranger? Did you ever think that you could be that person that God uses to save a soul? And that soul could save their family, their grandchildren, and generations to come. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we train, equip, and mobilize Catholic disciples to do the urgent work of evangelization. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Steve Ray is our guest. There's probably, so we could probably still get, we got a couple calls in front of you, but we could probably still get you on if you've got a question for Steve about Bible myths. Basically, Steve did a wonderful article for Catholic Answers Magazine online about things that we say about what the scripture means or what was possible in those days, and they're wrong. And sometimes they have a very, they have a kind of pious meaning that people will give them. But nonetheless, they are not correct as far as what the meaning of the scripture is. So we're just debunking some of those biblical myths with Steve this hour. 888-318-7884 is the number. Look, here's one, Steve. By the way, I'll start this by saying I don't know the day that Jesus was born, but I feel like December 25th is as good a possibility as any other day. But you do hear people say there's no way he was born on December 25th because the sheep aren't out in the fields in the winter, and the shepherds were in the fields. The angels came to the shepherds in the fields. They wouldn't be out in the fields on December 25th.
Yep, and that's is also another myth. I'm not arguing for the date of December 25th. My point here is that you cannot say that because it's cold in winter, they couldn't be out in the field with their sheep. I've heard good arguments why December 25th is the date or very near. But I have been to Bethlehem in the wintertime, and there are shepherds with sheep out in the fields. The kind of European sheep give birth in the spring. But these Middle Eastern sheep are called the Awasi breed, and they actually give birth in the winter, fall or winter. So they're out in the fields giving birth at that time. Now, whoever said that it's so cold in Bethlehem that the shepherds couldn't be out there with the sheep because it's too cold, they must have been born and raised in Minnesota. The reality, because that's where winter is, the reality is I looked it up. In December in Bethlehem, the temperature averages between 60 high and 45 degrees low. So you're in the range of 45 to 60 degrees all winter long. I have been there when it snowed, and I've even got off. We played with the Palestinian kids, having a snowball fight with them in Bethlehem just for the fun of it, and laughing with snow because they don't see it very often. But it melted in an hour. It's not that cold. It's kind of like Northern California, probably. It's never, I don't know. I know California is more temperate than I live in Michigan, where it's cold. It's starting to get that way now. But there would be lambs in the field in December, and I've seen them out there, and there's no reason to say they wouldn't be out there. So that is a myth too.
All right, but nonetheless, it's one we hear. I don't want to get to some calls
all the time.
We get cold here in Southern California. Last night, I dropped down to 50. I didn't know if I was going to make it. It was a tough.
No
it was
wonder
a tough
you
night.
have a beard.
Yeah, you got to bundle.
Warm.
You just got to bundle up, stay close to the family, and make sure you said all your prayers because you don't know if you're going to make it through a night like that. Father Tom's in Texas. Father Tom, thank you for the call. Go ahead with your question.
It's not a question. It's an answer, a correct answer. The eye of the needle is a gate that required the Roman soldiers to get off their horse, to take their backpack and their sword off and their spear down and go through the gate. That would make them very vulnerable to the people inside. It was a gate, I guess, 5 feet tall, 4 or 5 or something like that, that would protect the people inside. That's what was explained to me 10 or so years ago when I was there.
By who?
By the local tour guide.
Ah, yeah.
The local, I'll tell you what, I've been over 200 times to the Middle East, and I have had a whole variety of tour guides, and they make things up along the way. They cater to the people that they're with. They say what they want to hear. I'll give you an example. I had a Jewish guide one time that was explaining to us about Mary and the Annunciation, where he said that the angel came to Nazareth and asked all the girls and no one was interested. And finally, Mary says, okay, I'll do it. This is when you find you learn that from a guide, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. If you learn something from a guide, I'm basing mine on about 25 different Bible dictionaries and archaeological manuscripts here that say it's not a gate and it never was.
There just doesn't seem to be any archaeology for it, Father. No one has ever pointed to a gate that was ever called the Eye of the Needle.
Okay.
Because there wasn't one.
Perfectly logical to me, but yes, they've told me falsities as well, telling me this is the upper room, where Jesus did the Last Supper, and I reminded them that there was the revolution and the destruction after that. Oh, they rebuilt it exactly the same place. Yes, I know the tour guides tell us different things, but I was told that gate was the Eye of the Needle.
Well, I'm just going to quote from you from a very good and Jerome Biblical Commentary, which is a very respected commentary. It says the figure of the camel and the eye of the needle means exactly what it said. It does not refer to a small gate of Jerusalem. I can replicate that 20 or 30 times here from my notes that I have. I have a library on my laptop of 20,000 Catholic and archaeological books, and I did a search for this, and everywhere it says the same thing. So I don't trust the tour guides over there unless I verify what they're saying. By the way, there are 3 places that claim to be the upper room. There are 5 places that claim to be Emmaus, and tour guides have their favorite ones.
You find that anywhere you go where there's tour guides. They have their favorite one. But thank you for that very much. One of the great things about...
I don't mean to be contentious. I don't. If I came across argumentative, I don't. But I just want to make the point that I know these guides over there, and I know what they do and what they say, and they cater to the people with them. But I love this priest who just called, and I know that when you go over there and you come back, what the guide says, usually people don't question it. And I just wanted to make the point. I didn't want to be contentious at all. I'm sorry if I came across that way.
Well, the 888-318-7884 is the number. I want to continue on. Father, thank you very much for the call. Certainly one thing we have seen since the 19th century, when much of the historical accuracy of the scripture was contested by modern scholars, archaeology keeps uncovering these things that they said, oh, that doesn't exist. That's not there. And then it keeps finding them. So that is one of the great gifts of archaeology, is how the things that are in the scripture, many things that the scholars of the 19th century, the scholars of skepticism said, no, that's not there, including the place where the healing of the man born blind happened, that they are there. They were there, and they've been uncovered in subsequent years. Gina couldn't stay on the air. She was listening to the Great Modern Day Catholic Radio in Portland, Oregon. She wanted to know this: is the miracle of Jesus raising a man from the dead a prefigurement of his own death?
Oh, I don't think it's a prefigurement of his own death, but it is if you remember when he raised Lazarus from the dead, the point was, I am the life and the resurrection. It's showing his power, that he can actually raise someone from the dead. The Pharisees, they wanted all the attention. The scribes and the Pharisees, they were like the hot shots of the time, and people respected them and even feared them. And Jesus came along, like up in Galilee, when he went out to teach, 90% of Capernaum got up and went with him. And the Pharisees and the scribes left there in the synagogue were furious at him, because he could do miracles. He could teach them like they couldn't. He could cast out demons. He could raise people from the dead. He was also an entertainer. He could provide food for them in the wilderness. This is why Jesus got killed. They hated him. He was a political problem to them. But his raising someone from the dead, he did it for a boy right near Mount Tabor, Mount of Transfiguration, and he raised Lazarus. But it was more not a prefigurement of his own death, but it was an announcement or explaining that, look who's here. I can raise people from the dead. Nobody else around here can do that. I am the Son of God. I am who I say. I'm the life, and I am the life. I am the resurrection. And I think that when they asked him, how do we know you're the one to come? He would quote back to Isaiah. Go back and read. The deaf can hear, the blind can see, the lame walk. Man. But even more than that, the dead are raised.
The amazing thing about the raising of the dead is that it's a clear sign of divinity as well, because he does it under his own power. He doesn't say, in the name of God. He just says, get up. And if you can say to a dead person, get up, that is a clear sign of divine authority.
Yeah, very good point.
Little girl, get up. Get her something to eat. That's the other thing I love about Jesus. He's always got something, a follow-up. He raises somebody from the dead. Untie him and let him go. It's like, I just raised him from the dead, but also get him something to eat. That's already...
Do you want to touch on the on the last two? Or
sure, go ahead. Give me the last two myths that you covered.
Okay.
We got to go quick, though.
Number 5 in the article is that Paul was given a new name at his conversion, so that he was Saul of Tarsus. When he became a follower of Jesus, he got the new name Paul. But that's also inaccurate, because Paul was a Roman citizen. And so Saul was his Jewish name. He was from the tribe of Benjamin. He was named after the first king, King Saul, who was also from the tribe of Benjamin. So his Jewish name came from this great hero of the Israelite people. But Paul was his Roman name. He carried a Roman passport. He had citizenship, and that was his Latin or his Roman name, which is what he used after Acts 13 when he started going out to the Greek and Romans. He used that name. The last one is that at the biblical times they would swaddle a lamb. In other words, like Jesus, they'd wrap him and with his legs in, and they'd swaddle him to keep him from being blemished. If you could keep a lamb, he doesn't run out and get cut or broke his leg, you'd keep him swaddled. But that also didn't happen. It's not a fact. It never happened. A good friend of mine, Father Dwight Longenecker, wrote a book about this. He went out and lived with them, studied with them, and he said he asked the shepherds if they ever swaddled lambs, and they said no, they would never do that. Because how do you feed a lamb who's swaddled? If you've got 20 lambs that you've got them all swaddled, that means you have to go get a bottle with a rubber nipper and try to feed them. You can't do that. Lambs were not swaddled. And that didn't happen either.
Check out this story. Just go to Catholic Answers Bible Myths in your search engine. It'll take you directly to 6 biblical myths debunked, all well-meaning, all thought-provoking, all wrong. The article from Steve Ray. And it's just a wonderful reminder, I thought, Steve, that the Scripture is good enough on its own. We don't need to do these kind of pious additions or reinterpretations. The Scripture is good enough on its own. Stick with that.
I agree.
Steve,
and learn the culture behind it.
Right. It's not our culture. They did not live in our culture. And that's certainly true especially when you're talking about the figures of speech Jesus uses. Understanding his way of speaking is not your way of speaking. It's very helpful sometimes, and would have been helpful to lots of people who maybe plucked out an eye that he never intended for you to pluck out your eye. We're going to continue next hour with Dr. Stacy Trasenko's Faith and Science. That's what we'll cover next hour. Steve Ray, check him out at CatholicConvert.com. Thank you, Steve. I always love it.
Thank you. I enjoy it too, Cy. See you next time.
All right back with Dr. Stacy right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Hat Day on Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Dr. Stacy Trasancos here this hour. Steve Ray, he wears I don't know, tour guide hat. I don't know what to call that. It's not quite a pith helmet, but it's a traveling hat. And Dr. Stacy Trasancos wears her cowgirl hat. And now we are ready for your faith and science questions with the Texas accent. You are welcome to call 888-318-7884. Whatever your faith and science question is, whether it's for yourself or for someone else, Dr. Stacy is here to take it. Dr. Stacy Trasancos, as I always introduce her, scientist and theologian, but soon, to make my life more difficult, scientist, theologian, and philosopher, working on her graduate degree in philosophy right now. Dr. Stacy Trasancos, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me back on. I appreciate it.
We love it when you're on, and we love it when people call with their faith and science questions. It's strange that the Catholic Church, which has been devoted to learning and science for all this time, one of the number one obstacles to people accepting the Catholic faith for some reason is science.
It's kept me so busy, and I'm very grateful for it. But it's kept me busy and up late at night thinking about how do we take this beautiful philosophy from the wisdom of the Catholic Church and the theology, kind of like Aquinas did, and marry it with the modern science that we have today. I see that there's a lot of work to be done there. And I'm just very excited to be working on it and teaching about it. I teach a lot of classes to students at Catholic universities about faith and science and philosophy and the intersection of those three things.
Well, there may be, but I'm not aware of a large community of PhDs in the hard sciences. Your PhD, of course, is in chemistry, and who also have graduate degrees in theology and philosophy. And so I would assume that puts you in great demand. I mean, are you doing this kind of thing a lot?
Yeah, I am trying to focus my life more lately. So I do a lot of talks and I'm working on books and writing, but trying to free up to have time to focus on this a lot more. So yeah, it's what I do every day, all day, whether it's speaking or writing or teaching. And I love doing it. I do it all from my home in Texas. So I feel very blessed to have found my way in the world as a Catholic woman doing this.
888-318-7884 is the number if you'd like to talk with Dr. Stacy Trasancos about the intersection of faith and science, whatever your question is. If it's for you, that's fine. If it's for someone else, that's fine. If you are a believer, you're very welcome here. If you are not a believer, you are very welcome here. As a matter of fact, Dr. Stacy loves talking with non-believers about these things. Part of your journey, Dr. Trasancos, has been the fact that the beauty of science drew you towards the questions that brought you to God. It's not that it was, at least the way I understand your story, it's not a direct science proves God. That's not the story. It's more that your study, your work with trying to explain photosynthesis and whatnot as a chemist led you to questions that led you to God.
Yes, as a scientist, you're supposed to ask why. Why do things happen? And you're supposed to seek answers and gather data and form theories. And I felt like I never let myself ask the biggest why of all, about what's the basis of existence? Where did it all come from? I didn't even have the language to ask those kind of questions, to even say what grants everything its existence and its essence. And, those are all new words to me in philosophy. But I still nevertheless knew it had to come from somewhere. You can't look at the world with this much intelligibility and order and not wonder why it's all there in the first place and what your role is in it, because we're part of that great big universe. And science alone just does not answer those kind of questions. And I think the older I got, the more I had children and just trying to develop my relationships in my life, I just wanted answers like that. And it led me to the Catholic Church. They're doing the best work to find these answers.
And you didn't feel you had to turn off your brain. Like some people go like, no. Well, if you want faith, then you got to turn off your brain. That's not what happened to you.
No, I mean, if you want to hurt your brain, if you want real brain pain, just read Aquinas. I mean, it is understandable, but it takes a lot of work. And when you learn these new truths about existence and about creation and how everything's coming from God and being drawn back to God, and the language for expressing doctrine like the Holy Trinity and the Incarnation. Every time you learn something new like that, it's very exciting, and it always fits together with something else you learned. Like you're just putting these puzzle pieces together on this great big truth, which you'll never know all of it in your lifetime, but every time you see something new and learn something new and see how it fits in, it's the most exciting thing in the world. I mean, yeah, I'm getting older, but I feel younger than ever because I'm so excited to be learning these things. I mean, I understand chemistry now, I understand why I love atoms so much. And I wake up every day thinking, what am I going to learn next?
888-318-7884. If you'd like to talk with Dr. Trasancos about these topics, we would love to have you here. One thing I didn't mention, I think the book that really got people paying attention was Particles of Faith. Are you still writing? Are there more books coming?
Yes.
What's happening?
I'm still writing. I took a little bit of a break because I was doing some bioethics work for a while. But the reason I'm back to working on a PhD in philosophy is to feed my writing so that I can write with some authority on the science and the philosophy and theology, and that I'll have an interaction with the scholarly community to be doing that. But I don't want to just be a scholarly writer. I want to master the scholarship, but I want to communicate it. It shouldn't be boring. It's not boring. And not that all scholars are boring, but,
most are.
We don't.
Oh, sorry. Did I say that out loud? I beg your pardon.
I challenge myself to be able to explain things in a better way. And I just want to say something to Catholic Answers and to you, Cy. Thank you for what you do. I had an experience recently. I went to, unfortunately, the funeral of my dad's aunt and his uncle first and then his aunt later. And at the funeral in Dallas, Texas, a relative on his side named Nancy, and her husband's name is Brett, came up to me at the funeral after it was over and the family was visiting. So these are distant family members in Dallas. They recognized me from being on the show Catholic Answers because they watch it and listen to it every day. Her job in Dallas is to drive around to different school districts and help them with their supplies. And so she listens to Catholic Answers every day. And that was just a really neat experience. These two people, flesh and bone, right in front of me, were so grateful for what Catholic Answers does.
Oh, thanks for sharing that with us.
It was nice.
That's very nice.
It was nice.
Nobody ever
Shout
recognizes
out to
me.
Nancy and Brett.
Thanks, Nancy and Brett, especially Nancy. 888-318-7884 is the number if you want to talk with Dr. Stacy Trasancos about the intersection of faith and science. We'll start in Texas with Gabriel.
Yeah.
Gabriel, Texas, the Republic of Texas. All right, Gabriel, go ahead with your question for Dr. Stacy Trasancos.
Dr. Stacy Trasancos, I don't know if you remember, you spoke a while back, and I asked you for empirical, objectively verifiable, observable, repeatable, testable evidence that your God is real, and you gave me an argument of incredulity and a question-begging fallacy. And I would like to know if, you were able to rethink your answer and, give me one that doesn't include faith and the fine-tuning argument or argument of irreducible complexity for your deity.
Did you get it all?
I think I got it. You want to know if there's empirical evidence in biochemistry for God. Is that right?
Correct. And don't give me any logical fallacies like you did before.
Yeah, and
will
you
you
think
knock
I
that
gave
off,
you a lot.
Stacey?
I'm so sorry. I don't think that I gave you a logical fallacy before because I said that everything in science is like inductive empirical evidence pointing to something beyond science. That's not a logical fallacy. I'm actually logically trying to stay in the category of what we're trying to explain. So if you're thinking about God is that there is some physically discoverable truth in natural science, biochemistry, like if we're going to study the cell long enough and we'll find God waving at us, and I know you don't mean it like that, but that we'll study cells and atoms and biochemistry enough that we will have objective evidence in the science deductively that proves God exists. That's not what science is doing. It's the same kind of mistake categorically as if my son dug through his spaghetti and meatballs trying to find proof that mom exists. Just because I made the dinner doesn't mean he's going to find me literally in the dinner. So to ask that question is to ask a question that can't be answered with logical consistency, because it doesn't make any sense. So what I say about biochemistry, and I went and grabbed my book here. I love to look through this book, and it's a college level biochemistry written by Voet and Voet, Donald and Judith, a married couple. It's full of amazing detail of order that is intelligible to us to discover as human beings about how carbon atoms and oxygen atoms and everything that makes up the macromolecules and proteins that run living things, that are the material cause of living things. It's full of details like that. But to call, the only kind of evidence that can be as proof that God exists is inductive proof. It points to the existence of God. If you don't want to ask questions about what caused it all, if you don't want to ask questions about where it came from, like I was with my blinders on, not willing to ask the bigger questions, you're never going to find the answer. So you have to be willing to ask the right kind of question, Gabriel. And that's, if you think I'm committing a logical fallacy because I won't commit a logical fallacy the way I understand inductive and deductive evidence, then we need to have a much longer conversation. I know you weren't satisfied before, and I'm sorry about that. And that's why I devote so much time to working on this stuff, because it's just a fundamental, deeply flawed understanding, honestly, of logic itself.
Okay, but I felt that the last time we spoke, you said that you saw the sign and the chemicals that you made for a living, and that is an argument of incredulity.
I saw the sign.
No, you didn't have any other way that you can think about it. You said, how can you not believe that there's a designer behind these chemicals?
Right, and that was photosynthesis. So I did have that moment as a non-religious chemist working in a state-of-the-art laboratory trying to reproduce photosynthesis. And it hit me hard when I looked out the window one day and noticed the trees, and I realized that the photosynthetic process, which is only one process among many, happening in the thylakoid membrane in the cells of the trees, when it hit me all that's going on there that's just happening, that we study and try to elucidate and try to understand so we can take it into the lab and try and repeat it and fail so miserably at getting little tiny things at the nanoscale level to do what we want them to do. It hit me that if we're trying to artificially do something, where did the first instance of photosynthesis come from? Who is holding photosynthesis in order? What is? I don't think I said who at first. I think I wondered, where did it all come from? And I started searching and reading. I mean, if you read the ancient Greek philosophers, they were asking the same kind of questions. They were deducing that God must exist, which we can deduce that God must exist. But if you're going to use science, you're not going to get a deductive argument. You're going to get an inductive argument. You're going to look at things and say, there must be a God. I can form this bigger conclusion of something beyond science. You can deduce that science isn't the answer to everything. And that's what I was saying. I think I had 1 minute left in the show the last time you called.
I'm glad we had more time.
Mm-hmm.
Gabriel, I'm glad that you call when Dr. Stacy is on. Darren, I want to ask you a question before I go to the break. The philosophy for the people, the name of the, who's the guy? What's that? Pat Flynn. I don't know why Pat Flynn's name went out of my head. Gabriel, I just want to suggest it to you because Pat does a very fine job as a philosopher dealing with just exactly the question and that you were posing to Stacy. So just in addition to the conversation we just had and to the conversations I hope we have in the future, I hope you'll check out Pat Flynn, Philosophy for the People, and just see the work that he's doing there. I have to take the break, however. I went late. We'll be right back with more questions on faith and science with Dr. Stacy Trasenkos on Catholic Answers Live.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Is prayer powerful? St. Alphonsus Liguori put it this way: he who prays will be saved. He who does not pray, well, you get the point. Prayer can bring us salvation. It's the means of putting us into communion with God, and God can do all things. The more our will lines up with the will of God, the more powerful our prayers, and the simpler they become ultimately. Be it done to me, Lord, according to thy word. That's the prayer God will always answer.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. There's all these connections. I didn't know Pat Flynn, that you know of Pat Flynn from Dr.
Yes.
Gavin Kerr, who is
Yes.
on Pat Flynn's show all the time, and he's
Yes.
your PhD advisor. Small world.
Like he was Carlo Broussard's PhD advisor.
Wow, that's really cool. So yeah, I just love the way Pat Flynn talks. I was telling you at the break, I think you're very similar. You've both been on both sides of this. Neither of you is at all combative. You're just trying to help people, see it. That's all. Gabriel,
Pat's great.
Yeah, he is
Second
great.
that recommendation. He's great.
Right. He's also in the best shape of any Catholic apologist on the earth. We all agree Pat Flynn is in the best shape because he's some kind of, I don't want to say nut, but he's a nut. All right, Robert in Cincinnati, Ohio, you are next. Robert, listening on Sacred Heart Radio. Glad you're here, Robert. Go ahead with your question for Dr. Stacy Trasancos.
I've been thinking about artificial intelligence lately. I think a lot of people have. And I don't think of it as a person, but if artificial intelligence had free will, could people blame it for things? I think people want to put the blame on it because they can't anticipate what it's going to come up with.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll take that in two parts. Are you done? I don't want to cut you off. Okay. I'll take that in two parts. Like, if AI had free will, so first of all, could AI have free will? And the answer to that is no. It's going to be a no, that it can't have free will the way we talk about free will as it relates to humans and as it relates to God. We're made in the image and likeness of God. We have the powers of intellect and will because we're made in God's image. We have the ability to think and to make choices, and that's a spiritual power. It's not something that is reducible to our matter. It's not reducible to our brain. Our intellect and will work with our bodies. We're all one person, but we don't. The kind of free will there is a spiritual power. So AI can never have spiritual powers because it's not spiritual. So it can't have free will in that sense. Now, it certainly seems to have free will because we can ask it a question and we're not sure what it's going to say. And we're being asked in this day and age to trust AI with what it tells us. But those are algorithms that are designed by people with free will that goes out and gathers. It's like Google search engine on steroids. It's massive, it's the next level search engine. And so it's going to go out and find answers. And really the questions we need to be asking about that are, can we trust the answers that it gives us? Because it could summarize false information and give us false information. So it could only seem to have free will. It could never actually have free will. So if it seems to have free will, could it be blamed? You might need to correct me on this part of the question. Could it be blamed? So does that alleviate us of any responsibility for our own choices? I think it doesn't. Maybe it mitigates it sometimes. If, my child looked up something and got an AI answer and came and talked to me about it and it was wrong, I would still hold my child accountable for not doing his own homework and looking up the answer himself. So I think there's partial blame in the sense that it would be an algorithm that we have to decide whether we trust or not. And sometimes we might place our trust wrongly on free will, on the AI.
Did that get to what you were looking for, Robert?
Very much, but still, I am Catholics think of a person, and so free will is not a I mean, does free will is spiritual. A person is spiritual, right?
Partly.
Yes. Spiritual and bodily.
Okay. Okay. Well, I appreciate your answer.
Robert, thank you for the call. AI, I imagine, are you getting more AI questions? We're getting more AI questions. Are you, Stacy?
Yes, and I think we're all right to be thinking about it, because propaganda is going to take on a whole new meaning with AI.
I like AI personally because I don't have that much eye, and so it fills in a lot of the stuff that my eye doesn't know about, because I need more of the AI in my eye.
Yeah. The Pontifical Academy of Sciences, I like the way they put it in one of their meetings on robotics and artificial intelligence back in 2017. But they said that AI is made in the image and likeness of humans.
That's it. That's
that
it.
We are made in the image and likeness of God. So we have free will and intellect like God does. AI only has an artificial version of free will and intellect.
Yeah. The problem with human beings is we have a tendency to put things that are lower than us in the position of the one who's higher than us. And so we start.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but that's what we do.
Upside down. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, that we are upside down. That
upside down.
888-318-7884 is the number. Chris is in Columbus, Ohio. I wonder if he gets comments on that. Chris in Columbus, listening on 820 AM. I don't know. Just when I see it in print, maybe it's different than when people say it. Chris in Columbus.
What's that about the physicist?
Oh yeah, you can talk to the physicist. Yes, she's here. I was just commenting that your name is Chris and you live in Columbus, because.
Oh, Chris in Columbus. Yeah.
Sorry, it was meaningless. But go ahead with your.
It is Chris. It's Christopher also.
Oh, Christopher. Yeah. Christopher in Columbus. Go ahead with your question for Stacy in Texas.
Yeah, I've always had a question about a Jesuit priest from Belgium whose calculations as a physicist are credited as being the man that discovered the Big Bang. So yes. I know that the church and they're all this just distance themselves from it, and the secular community has taken the Big Bang and just to disprove the creation. So I don't know how does the church deal with something like that. I mean, you have your Jesuit priest, Georges Lemaitre, I think his name was.
Lemaitre.
He discovered the Big Bang. It's in his credit, and apparently Hubble is the one who confirmed it with the telescopes and the expansiveness of the universe. So I just wonder back in the day, I think the church was trying to take credit for it, or to integrate it into its doctrine, I guess. But they kind of stopped. I think the secular community just took it over. And they just kind of separated on that. But it's still, to me, it's just I think that having a Jesuit priest discover that, I think, like I say, if there is a God, he has a tremendous sense of humor. Because I just think that's a huge irony to me, to have those two connections,
Well, let's let Stacy comment on that, and then I'll come back to Chris.
Chris in Columbus, that is a beautiful, beautiful thing that you bring up. And I want Catholics to know this so much. My chapter 4 in Particles of Faith is, does the Big Bang prove God? And I devoted it to that. This was in late 20s, 1930s, so it wasn't that long ago that Father Lemaitre came up with this idea of a Big Bang. He didn't actually come up with the word Big Bang. Fred Hoyle came up with that later. But until that time, the prevailing cosmological theory was this steady state theory, in which there was, it was from Einstein, and there was this zero density empty universe that was expanding. And so the universe was constantly expanding. It didn't have a beginning in time. And so here you have a Catholic priest who is a physicist and cosmologist. And he knows that there is a beginning in time because that's what he believes in faith. Yet there is this prevailing cosmological theory that doesn't acknowledge a beginning in time. He does his calculations, as you mentioned, Chris, and he posits a beginning in time, and it makes more sense of the data. And so he tries to push this forward, and it's met with great resistance. But he wasn't pushing his scientific theory forward because he had this need to prove that his faith was right with science, getting back to Gabriel's question. Father Lemaitre knew better. He didn't do that. He said it's separate. Let science discover what it discovers, but science here is consistent. And he actually advised the Pope Pius XII, don't use this as proof for God's existence. Use it as a consistent inductive proof.
Let's come back to this when we come back right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Deepen your connection to the Church's holy days and seasons while you draw on the wisdom of the Church Fathers. Feasts of Our Fathers, the new book from Mike Aquilina and Adam Lucas, is a treasury of history, prayers, insights, and lessons that will bring you closer to the earliest of Catholic traditions. Take your prayer life and your solidarity with the Church, past and present, to a new level. Order your copy of Feasts of Our Fathers today at shop.catholic.com.
We hope that one of the things that we communicate here at Catholic Answers Live is that our Catholic faith allows us to be fully serious about all the problems we encounter in the church and in the world, but it also lets us have light hearts and maybe even mix in a bit of fun. And that is exactly what our good friend Joe Heschmeyer does in his popular podcast, Shameless Popery. You should check it out at shamelessjoe.com. Joe's got a deep grasp of the faith, of morals, the teachings of the church, all that, but he's also got a witty conversational style. He entertains and he informs, but you will leave equipped to better answer the most common challenges, misconceptions, and questions about the Catholic faith. He's got insightful guests, he does on-air debates, and he takes a close look into all the things that you want to know about as a Catholic living today. You'll walk away knowledgeable and filled with joy. Look for Joe on his YouTube channel. Check him out at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, become a patron.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers monthly giving club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. It's always great to have Dr. Stacy Trasancos with us. One of the great conversations, one of the great opportunities really we have is to talk about the intersection of faith and science. And many people think that there's an inherent conflict. As a matter of fact, there's a thing called the conflict theory of faith and science. Mm-hmm. It's basically a debunked theory, but it's one that many people think is still a big deal. I know that I don't like to insult those people, but they're stuck in the 19th century. Sorry, I shouldn't have said it that way. Dr. Stacy Trasancos is the author of Particles of Faith. She blogs or something at Substack. What do you do at Substack? I don't know what that's called. That's blogging, right?
I just write.
You write?
I think we just call it writing.
You write
yeah.
at Substack.
I write my Substack.
So
yeah.
if people want to read your writing, what do they have to look for?
StacyTrasancos.substack, or just search it, or you can search and find my website and find a link there. And the website is called God in Elements.
But
it's wonderful. Under my name. So I'm just writing about my philosophical work.
Well, we've got Chris on the line with us still in Columbus.
Chris.
And Chris, just wanted to point out that, and I do think this is an important thing to point out, that the person who originated what became known as the theory of the Big Bang was a Jesuit priest and physicist. And you were pointing out, and this is something that I've kind of learned from you, or it was articulated by you in ways that I understood it, that the faith actually does point us in the direction of the truth. And that's why you have these great or it's part of why you have these great priest scientists, for example, like Gregor Mendel or Georges Lemaitre, that there is actually something in the faith that pointed him in the right direction here. It didn't settle the science for him, but it pointed him in the right direction of where to look.
No, and Father Lemaitre is to be applauded for keeping the two separate, because what you never want to do in science with data is impose a preconceived a priori worldview onto the data, because then you're being biased. And he didn't. He let the data speak for itself, and the data posited a beginning in time, or a Big Bang. Well, it's not really a beginning in time, but it's the start of what we know as the universe. And I love what he did with the Pope at the time. So he is in the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, and Pope Pius XII says it's the fiat lux. It's the fiat of light. Let there be light. And he says this is the proof that we have long awaited for the existence of God from science. But Father Lemaitre went to his advisor and said, basically, tell him to shut up. He said, tell him not to say that, because if there's ever scientific data that disproves the Big Bang, and there are scientists today working on other theories, if the scientific data ever leads us in a different direction, then what are people going to say? Oh, well, the science has now proven that God doesn't exist. So it's like I was saying to Gabriel before. You don't look for God's existence, the proof of it, in any single scientific theory. You deduce it with good philosophy and good logic. You can deduce that God must exist, and you can be led to the existence of God by looking at what's in nature, like it says in Romans, I think 1:21, that we can tell that God exists by looking at nature. And so Father Lemaitre was very insistent that those two things stay separated. And after he talked to the Pope's advisor, the Pope never said that again. Instead, he praised philosophy for philosophy's sake and science for science's sake, and the freedom that the Catholic Church acknowledges the sciences should have. I think that's what a lot of people miss.
Chris, I want to come back to you and see what you think of all that.
I'm just feeling very lucky that I finally found someone that can talk about this. Because, I discovered George a long time ago, and it seems like no one knows about this priest that basically discovered the Big Bang. And I was always wondering why, the secular scientists and the faithful scientists couldn't bring this a little more together. It just seems like it's just going to be so separated. People that are faithful and people that aren't. And I think that's where the line is drawn. Like I said, I'm just fortunate. I really feel fortunate that I found somebody that can talk about this. Somebody that knew something anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for the call, Chris.
I really think, I think it should be more. It should be more talked about.
That's Dr. Stacy's whole life. That's why you're singing her song right now. She has dedicated her life to getting people to talk about this, Chris. So hang on. I'll tell you what. We'll send you a copy of Jimmy Akin's book, A Daily Defense, if you'd like, just to say thanks for a great call and a great conversation. I will say I have many problems with the way things are phrased on Wikipedia, but Wikipedia has a wonderful page of a list of Catholic clergy scientists, and they're just barely scratching the surface, and it's probably, I don't know, a few hundred. And when you think about these Catholic priest scientists are not minor figures. When you think about Georges Lemaitre, or I mentioned Gregor Mendel, and many, many others, these are people right at the heart of it. And that's where Christians belong, is at the heart of science, not off on the periphery somewhere. Chris, thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, so Bill wasn't able to stay on the line. Is that what Bill from Jefferson Township, Pennsylvania. He couldn't stay on the phone there because are they rioting in Pennsylvania yet? No, not yet. Okay. Could science prove the existence of God? Have you read Peter? Oh, it's a series of questions. Have you read Peter Kreeft? Yeah. Are spirit and matter distinct and disconnected? Not in you, Bill.
No.
All right, go ahead, Stacy. So let's take those three.
So I think I already talked about the ways in which science can prove the existence of God. I actually teach college students about this, and we talk about the Big Bang. It's one reason I know so much about it, because I use that as an example of what science can and cannot prove about the existence of God. It's an inductive kind of proof. Have I read Peter Kreeft? Yes, and I owe a lot of my interest in philosophy and theology to him. I have read him. What we talk about with spirit and matter, I'm not really sure what Bill, I wish he could be on the call. I'm not sure what he means about are they distinct and disconnected. The concept of hylomorphism is something I never heard outside of Catholic circles, and I'm just now getting my mind around what all it means. Hylomorphism is the idea, it started with Aristotle, it was developed by Aquinas, that everything that exists in the material world is both matter and form. It's a composite of matter and form. And so we are substances that are composites of matter and form. The matter is our body. The form is our soul, is the form of our body. And form is, and God creates things this way. And form is what grants the essence and the existence to us made manifest in the matter. So they're not, speaking of them in terms of definitions, we talk about them as two different things, but they're not disconnected. That you can't have form without matter, and you can't have matter without form. There is something called prime matter, but it's only spoken of as something that is total potential, whereas form is total act. And in things that exist, they're composites. The matter is disposed to the form, and the form grants to the matter what it is. So you can talk about those two things definitionally as different, but in everything that exists, everything that we study in science is a composite of form and matter. And so we study that form to figure out, when we study what the elements on the periodic table are, we're asking questions about the form of those elements. And we learn about the form by studying the matter of those elements.
Bill, I'm so glad we got the question. I'm sorry we didn't get to talk with you personally,
I'm sorry.
But thank you very much for the question. This is one of the things that I mean, this is where you just love being a Catholic when you talk about the fact that we are hylomorphic creatures. There's just nowhere else that you're going to get that kind of talk, and it's the only thing that explains what we are. Because a lot of people think that what Christians believe is that we have a soul in our body. And that's not what Christians believe. We don't have a soul in our body. We don't have a ghost floating around in us. We're hylomorphic. We are a single substance made of spirit and matter. That's a pretty good. I love being I'm going to write a song about that. It's going to be called "I Love Being a Hylomorph." Yeah, that's it. I just decided.
Should be a hit.
You don't seem entirely enthusiastic.
No, I'm just thinking, how would Cy do this?
Well, you're just going to have to wait and see. Hang on, Adele. You're going to number 2. We'll be right back with Dr. Stacy Trasancos. We're talking faith and science. If you have faith and science questions, as you can tell, she has talked to believers. She has talked to non-believers. And whichever category you fit in, even if it's somewhere in between those, you are welcome to ask your faith and science question. 888-318-7884. I will just mention, we always get questions on evolution for Dr. Stacy. Not a single question on evolution yet today. Maybe you've solved it on your other appearances. People no longer have questions about the theory of evolution. Right back with more Dr. Stacy Trasancos on Catholic Answers Live.
It's all about the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Hi, this is Mike Aquilina with a few words about St. Irenaeus. It's only recently that Pope Francis has declared him to be a doctor of the Church. And this is unusual because he's been dead for many centuries, almost 2 millennia. But I think he's a man for our time because he's teaching us to think, to have an educated faith, to know the reasons for what we believe, and then present those to a skeptical world.
The Catechism defines evangelization as the proclamation of Christ and His gospel by word and the testimony of life. But what does that look like in real life? It looks like St. Paul street evangelists out in the public square sharing the good news. We're a Catholic nonprofit that starts conversations by handing out free sacramentals. Then we employ our method of listen, befriend, proclaim, and invite. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Using a little AI in the studio, Darren is asking ChatGPT to write a song called "I Love Being a Hylomorph." So we should get the lyrics soon from ChatGPT. Dr. Stacy Trasancos,
I can't wait.
Our guest, and you're welcome to call. Particles of Faith, one of her books. That's not the only book, but certainly I think that's your most popular book. Isn't that your most famous book? Particles of Faith?
I think so, yeah. The other one is Behold It As I, which I looked at some Eucharistic miracle investigations. But I want to do the sequel to Particles of Faith. It's going to be called Elements and Angels: Life Among the Invisible.
I love it because the elements are, you can't see an atom and you can't see an angel.
I think about invisible things all the time, and that's kind of my
They're
lonely
invisible for
existence.
2 different reasons. But nonetheless, both invisible.
Yes.
888-318-7884, the number. Dr. Stacy Trasancos, scientist, theologian, and prospective philosopher. That will depend on the people at the university, whether they will confer that degree upon her. If you've got a question about faith and science, you're welcome to call. We were talking with Steve Ray last hour about kind of like pious myths about Scripture. And there are pious, I don't know if they're myths, but ideas that people have about faith and science. And one of them, I want to just check it with you. This idea that came, we got it a few years ago, and it's still hanging on, that at the moment of conception, there's some physical, visible flash of light, which I don't know, people take to be the ensoulment or what, but is that true? Does that really happen? What's that all about?
Yeah, thank you. I do get questions about that quite a lot. It really took hold. There was this scientific research where the scientists saw in the microscope this flash of light at the moment of fertilization. So at the moment when the sperm enters the egg, there was a flash of light. And that caught on. It was actually called the mini Big Bang. It was called the mini Fiat Lux, let there be light, at the moment of conception. And the same kind of advice that George Lemaitre gave to the Pope back in the 1930s still applies now. And here's the myth part about it, though. There is no flash of light at conception. I mean, when you were conceived, when I was conceived, when my children were all conceived, there was no flash of light in my womb the moment that sperm entered egg and a new human being existed. It is wonderful. I'm not trying to take away from the awe and the wonder at all. But what happened in this one scientific paper, the scientific paper was called the zinc spark. Something about the signature of human egg activation, a zinc spark. So what happens is, biochemically speaking, again, amazing, when that one winner sperm makes it into the egg, chemical changes start to happen in the egg. They do start to act in unison. And calcium starts to build up in the cell. The ion calcium, Ca2+, starts to build up in the cell, and it causes the zinc that's in the egg to flow out through the membranes. And so outside the egg, there will be a flow of zinc ions. Well, what the researchers did is they found this fluorescent tag, it's called fluosin, and they put it in the surrounding outside the egg. And whenever the zinc would flow out, it would bind to this fluorescent detector. And when they shine light on it, it would fluoresce and give this flash of light. So it was artificial. It was a chemical dye to be able to detect when the zinc flowed out. The zinc flows out at the moment of fertilization when the sperm makes it through. The zinc flows out, and they were just trying to see the zinc with this fluorescent tag. And so it was an artificial flash of light in the first place. That doesn't actually happen in the human womb. And it was only because of this fluorescent tag. So there is no miraculous flash of light at conception, but a lot of people, pro-life people with very good intentions, didn't get all of that. They just heard the part about there's a flash of light at the moment of conception, and they ran with it. And it kind of, that's something that can be criticized it kind of makes you look like you need science to shore up your faith when you do that. So don't do that, because we don't need the fluorescent tag to tell us something miraculous happens at the moment of conception. That's something that good philosophy and theology already tell us.
Right, and the fact that at fertilization we have a new creature. That part science had already well established a long time ago.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go to Bob in South Carolina. Bob, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Dr. Stacy Trasancos.
Hi, Dr. Stacy. I am a devout Catholic. I am also an AI engineer, and I think there's very strong arguments that sentience can exist on silicone. Basically, if a single neuron can be modeled, and our brain is a system of neurons, well, then so can the interaction of a system of neurons be modeled. We just need sufficient hardware. Furthermore, I don't see anything so special about carbon that it can have sentience as opposed to silicon.
Okay. How are you defining sentience? Yeah, it is scary.
Sentience meaning self-awareness, the ability to make rational decisions. Well, not just rational decisions, but the ability to feel and experience rather than just make predictions based on conditional probabilities. And
so actually drive its own choices.
Drive its own choices, but not only drive its own choices, feel the effects of its own choices. Have feelings and emotions. And the scary part is, if sentience can exist in silicone, well, guess what? Then these transhumanists like Ray Kurzweil are correct that we can eventually be uploaded to servers. Now, you mentioned how AI can lead to dangerous propaganda. Think about the dangerous torture and suffering this can lead to.
Yes. But I agree with you that I'm familiar with Ray Kurzweil's singularity and his idea that we can be uploaded and become immortal in the silicon. I always thought it was kind of interesting, like your grandmother dies, but she's uploaded into his device. And then you ask this device, Grandma, are you still alive? And the device says yes. How do you prove that that really happened? But what I'm struggling with, I would love to hear more about what you're thinking, Bob, because I'm not an AI engineer, but I hear what you're saying. What I have a problem with is I think there could probably be neural systems there are already neural systems on silicon, the same as, whatever element it is, whether it's silicon or carbon, but the system of the network that forms from that, it's still just material. To say that something spiritual like intellect and free will would arise, or sentience would arise, if you're talking about sentience meaning the same thing as intellect and free will, that would arise from that matter, then that's emergentism. That's saying that our souls emerge from our matter. It's a bottom-up proposition, and we don't do that as Catholics. The soul can't emerge from matter. That's to misunderstand what the soul is. So I don't see how AI could ever actually have intellect and free will in that sense. So sentience, that's why I ask you what you mean, because sentience can mean like consciousness too.
Yeah, that is what I mean, and that's an excellent answer. So the thought experiment, though, in response to that would be our brains, our neurons, are constantly recycling atoms. They ingest atoms, they excrete atoms, and none of the same carbon atoms that form us now were part of our body 7 years ago. So if we get a neurochip, for example, and our neurons naturally degrade with age, and the chip takes over more and more of the function slowly, and eventually we have no neurons, so just a chip, but we're still thinking and talking, would we say our soul transferred from the carbon to the silicon?
Wonderful question. I had never heard that question. That's a wonderful question, Bob.
It is a wonderful question, Bob. And I tell students when we talk about things, we don't spend a lot of time on it, but I tell them the reason that college students need to be learning about this stuff is because they're going to have to figure this out. It's probably going to fall to them what to do when someone calls AI sentient and when it seems like it's sentient. And I'm thinking now of the brain organoid technology. There's a way that they can take stem cells and grow mini brains in the Petri dish, so they can get the stem cells to do the same thing that a developing brain would do in an embryo in a dish, and they can do lots of many organs this way. But the brain organs that they're growing in the dish, the scientists are actually starting to see different hemispheres of the brain form, and they're starting to connect them, and they're asking the same question: is that thing going to be sentient at some point? And what you're saying, Bob, the other thing it's making me think about, there has long been this question of how much of our body can we replace and still be us? Like, can you cut your arms off and put bionic arms on? Yeah. Can you do that with your legs? How far can you go? And I think that's a similar question to what you're asking with the brain slowly being replaced, carbon for silicon. How far can you go before you have a brain functioning like it always did? Is the soul still there? And I don't think there is an answer to that question. So all I can really say there is I'm glad there are people like you doing what you do who are already thinking about it.
The minority. We're in the minority. Most of the people are secular. Many of them grew up Jewish. Anyone who discriminates against Jewish, I'm not a fan of. My point is they don't have our worldview. And we're putting cameras everywhere. Priests are bringing their cell phones, their smartwatches, their iPads into the confessional. It's listening. We are not approaching this wisely as a church.
Wow, Bob, I'm so glad that you called. Like, those are things that I honestly, I hadn't thought of, and now they're going to make me miserable thinking about them. Thank you, Bob, for that. But those are important things to consider.
Yeah, right.
Because many people do have the experience, and I know that all the companies say, no, this is not true, but their cell phone listens to them, or their Alexa listens to them, and then they see the evidence of it. Now, I don't have evidence of that except anecdotal, but what does that mean when I walk into the confessional with my cell phone? Then what does that? There is a question there. That's something important to consider. Bob, Bob, thank you very, very much. I'm going to try to get to another caller if I can
get
you, Bob. This other caller on. Bob, thank you so much for the call and for the very thoughtful remarks and conversation. Yes. Dr. Stacy Trasancos is our guest. I will say that, I can go to the call? All right, David, I don't have a location, but I'm glad you're here. Thanks very much for the call. Go ahead with your question for Dr. Stacy Trasancos.
Oh, thank you. I'm actually north of Silicon Valley out here in San Francisco. So even though I'm not an expert on AI, I pay attention and we get, a lot more discussion of it out here. I personally see that it's more a precursor to the robot world. Out here, I work on energy issues, and the discussion about AI is that it's going to hog electricity. That everybody's going to set their dials to automatically making your coffee machine in the morning, automatically starting your car before you even go outside, everything like that. And it's basically a way for the power companies to produce more electricity. And that said, it very much is tied to the pro-nuclear aspect of electrical generation. If you noticed in the news just a week or so ago, many of the biggest, I think Microsoft and some of the other companies are trying to get 3 Mile Island restarted.
David, I'm sorry to do this to you, but I got to get a comment from Dr. Stacy because we're going to run out of time. Is there a particular thing you wanted to comment on?
Well, it's an energy hog method for nuclear to give themselves self-importance.
Dr. Stacy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, David, thank you, and thank the previous caller for bringing these questions up. I think there needs to be a lot more discussion on AI and what it means, because there will come a time when these brain organoids or the AI or something is going to be claimed to have sentience, and we need to know what that means. We need to challenge them on what they mean by it and what we mean by it. And the energy concerns are something I'd never thought of, but like Sai, I'm going to be kept awake by it now. But thank you for bringing this to our awareness. I think we need to have more conversations.
Wonderful conversations, wonderful questions. And I'm actually glad we didn't. I don't mind talking about evolution, but it usually takes over the hour when we do. And this was a great opportunity for a great variety.
Different kind of evolution.
Can we do this again before the end of the year? I love it when you're here and we get to talk about this good stuff. Was that a yes?
I would love to.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
All right. Well, now we're out of time. Well, thanks, Dr. Stacy Trasancos. We will see you tomorrow, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.